Are you ready? This is David Wilcock, Gaiam TV, Wisdom Teachings, and we are on a mission to find the truth of one of the most incredible mysteries of world history. How is it that so many mythologies around the world, all of which said that they were given by the gods, that these extraterrestrial humans, or angels if you will, came to earth and gave them these spiritual teachings about being more loving, being more in tune with nature, also encoded something in mythology. Dozens of different mythologies, we've identified over 30 of them, that all have information predicting a coming golden age. This information is fascinating, and here at Gaiam TV, we are not censored. Even though this is considered one of the most sensitive, highly classified secrets of the military-industrial complex, what I'm telling you now, they know about this. And in today's episode, we're going to be getting into the Great Seal of the United States, the symbols of the Illuminati. We're going to talk about what they really know. And we are not gagged. I can say anything I want. Gaiam TV has over 5,000 unique metaphysical and spiritual titles, including over 50% of the entire available catalog of yoga and fitness videos that are out there on the market today. So you can get in shape. It's a mind-body-spirit integration, and if you are watching this television show as a Gaiam TV subscriber, I want to hear your questions. You mail us in your questions on the comment forms on the website, and then if you get picked, we will ask you to submit your question as a video. You will be right here on my screen. We will see your face for however many thousands of people, or maybe hundreds of thousands of people are watching this show. You'll be right here. Ask me your question, and I'll answer it for you. So that's one of the benefits of being a subscriber. That's why we're doing this. We want this to be your show, not just my show. We want to get together and find the frontier of this knowledge, find the mystery. So this is a very essential point that any talk that I want to give is going to focus on. These two historians were at the top of their game. These are the kind of people that when they write a paper, it's published in peer-reviewed academic journals loaded with footnotes at the end. They were highly respected in the academic community. Now, they poured through all these different mythologies around the world, and they came up with something so fantastic, so fascinating, that it led to them writing an entire academic work called Hamlet's Mill, as I said in the previous episode, which argued that this weird Earth cycle, the precession of the equinoxes, was encoded into mythologies from all over the world. Very strange. Now, why would they do that? What is this Earth cycle to begin with? The Earth cycle is a wobble that appears in the Earth's axis. It's a 25,920 year change in the actual position. This means that if you build, let's say here in Egypt, you build a pyramid and you align it with a certain star, it's going to drift by 1 degree every 72 years in the night sky. So that alignment is going to change. So you don't get that to work for very long. As I said in the last episode, we have a precession breakthrough. We finally know why this seemingly innocuous little cycle in the Earth matters so much, and that's the work of Walter Cruttenden, who wrote an incredible book that proves that we live in a binary solar system, and that means that this Earth wobble is actually caused by us orbiting another star, which he calls the lost star, hence the title of his book, Lost Star of Myth and Time. Now this star that we're orbiting around, here it's called the Black Sun. Notice that we're having an elliptical orbit, so that as we move through space, it's going slower, and then it accelerates as we go towards where we are now. This would be like the December 21st, 2012 point that we just passed through. These represent the ages of the zodiac, which are units of time, 2,160 years in length each, that determine how we're going through this. So binary star system, again, it's both stars making elliptical orbits around each other, and the speed increases as they come closer at the point called periapsis. And then at the point called apoapsis, they're farther apart, and the speed goes down. As I argued in the last episode, the faster you move through space, the more source field you're moving through, and these binary stars constitute 80% of all the identified stars in our galaxy. So I will argue, actually, that all stars are ultimately going to be at least binary, and that this mechanism of how they play off of each other's energy to stimulate evolution is part of the basic design of the cosmos, and that is mirrored in the Law of One series, as we will show later on in this series. So again, here's our local neighborhood of stars, and we got Alpha Centauri here. This is a new one that was only discovered recently, and yet look at how close it is. That's important because it shows that new stars can be discovered. And if it's a brown dwarf, we may not know about it. It could be literally somewhere around this range, this close to the sun, and we wouldn't know. So this weird cycle, this slow counter-rotating wobble in the Earth's axis, actually is the entire solar system moving together. And the ancient myths nailed that with the metaphor of the grain mill. As the millstone is ground around in circles, it's like the Earth rotating on its axis, which is even easier to see in this illustration. As you see, here is your big millstone, and this is the axle. Now, the worker is going to have to push against this handle here and grind that grain until it's totally fine. The ancient myths all have the grain mill in it. It's a conspiracy theory that archaeologists don't know what to do with, that all these different cultures around the world all had teachings about a mill and that the axle breaks. And Santillana van de Shen were the first one to put that together. And ultimately what it's saying is that there is a golden age is coming into view. The golden age is this idea that something wonderful happens on Earth, a transformation of the Earth into a truly blissful, magnificent state. And the words etos and seklos were originally used to mean age, when in fact the literal translation is race. Now again, this is not a Hitlerian vision of the Übermensch or the Wunderkind. We're not talking about anything like that. This is everybody on Earth, all races, transfiguring into beings of light. And what I'm now seeing, and I found new quotes in the Law of One to support this, is that this change does occur gradually. It's not necessarily instantaneous, although it will occur in a relatively short period of time, and we're now starting that transfiguration. So that's very exciting. We're moving through the Ascension process, and best of all, the American founding fathers put that prophecy on the dollar bill right here in our old friend, the Great Seal of the United States. What is this? This annuit septis actually means the year begins. Annu, annual, septis, conception. The Latin is very straightforward, and it means birth of the year. Novus Ordo Seclorum means new secular order. But as you're going to see, that is a quote from something else. So let's talk about that quote. We learned what Novus Ordo Seclorum is quoted from Charles A.L. Totten, who is a Civil War hero. This is him as a young man, and then this is him as he gets older, looking disturbingly similar to Sigmund Freud. What's up with that pointy devil beard? I don't know. Anyway, you know this guy is a big insider because when he writes a letter to the Secretary of the Treasury, he actually gets marked down in history for having written that letter. So he wrote the letter to the Secretary of the Treasury, Charles Folger, on February 10th, 1882, and said, Novus Ordo Seclorum is a quotation from Virgil's 4th Eclogue. And Virgil borrowed it from the mystic Sibylline records. Now, what the heck are the Sibylline records? That's the next stage of our investigation. We have to find out the answer. Here is the Sibyl of Cumae. She was considered the greatest psychic in the history of humanity. Her books were channeled, and she became known as the greatest psychic in all time. Her books became the greatest treasure in the history of Rome. The story of how the Roman king got her books is very interesting because he rejected her the first 2 times, and she burned 3 volumes of these books each time. Only at the end, on the 3rd time, her legend as a psychic had grown so huge that he accepted the books and paid her 9 bags of gold, which is a tremendous amount of money, that had to be hauled out on donkeys to carry the bags. But it was worth it because he found that her prophecies predicted events in Roman history before they happened and told you when they were going to happen. So the first thing they did when they got these books is look up the future and say, my gosh, there's going to be a flood coming up in the spring, we don't know what it is, but it says that everybody's going to be starving. So the king says, well, I know what we're going to do. We'll lock away all the grain and we're going to lock away that silo, because if our food is missing, we're not going to allow anybody to steal it. So they lock it away, they put everybody on austere rations, and at the end of the season, they open up the vault where all the grain is supposed to be, and it's flooded. And the grain has gone to blight. And now it's all destroyed, and you can't eat it, and the prophecy came true. Now, do you remember that scene in The Matrix where they meet the Oracle, and what does she say? And don't worry about the vase. What vase? And he turns around, remember, and he knocks into the vase, and he knocks it over. And then she goes, now what's really going to bake your noodle is, would you have broken it if I hadn't have said anything? Now think about that. What was she really saying right there? She was saying that his warning, that actually hearing the prophecy made it come true. That is a holdover from the insiders from this Roman legend of the Sibyl of Cumae. Now, what did she say? Although these prophecies were considered so highly accurate over time, they locked it away. That's another thing I want to point out first, is that her prophecies were kept hidden in a vault, the Roman equivalent of Area 51. They built this thing called the Temple of Jupiter on the highest hill in Rome called Capitoline Hill, 5 levels of security guards. You could not get in there, and then even if you got in, you still had to get through locked chambers to get to these books, because they knew that their sworn enemy, such as Carthage, which was a comparable kingdom back then, if Carthage got their hands on this, oh my God, they could wipe Rome out, because every time Rome had some big disaster, it was predicted in the book. It's interesting that the prophecies didn't help Rome out. These prophecies, they finally got to the point that they locked it up and they wouldn't even read it unless there was already a grievous national emergency, because it was like the leprechaun wish. Be careful what you wish for, because you just might get it. Like there's the classic story of, well, I wish I could see through women's clothing. And then you see into their organs and you're like freaking out. You don't get to see them naked, you see the body inside. Ah! So that's the same idea here. It was like the leprechaun wish. So the prophecy didn't help the Roman Empire, but it got their attention. And what got their attention the most was that these prophecies continued through the time that we're in right now. And if they were that accurate back then, why would they stop being accurate now? The prophecies continued, and the ultimate point here is that this quote that you're looking at right here, the mighty order of ages is born anew, that is what the dollar bill quote comes from. That is what Charles A. L. Totten told us. Novus Ordo Seclorum is a shortened form of this. A mighty order of ages is born anew. Now, that means the 25,000-year cycle. In context, it's very obvious. Both the prophetic virgin and Saturnian kingdoms now return. Who the heck is that? We're not talking about people here. Virgo and Saturn, we're talking about extraterrestrials. We're talking about the gods. And that will become more obvious as we go on. Let's read a little more. A new progeny is let down from the lofty heavens. What? What is a progeny? Progeny is an offspring. A new offspring. Lofty heavens, the word heaven often is translated to mean outer space in any document from that time, including the Bible, and that's something we're going to get into in future episodes. But a new progeny, a new offspring, comes down from outer space. This is talking about a very big change. This is talking about a coming new age, hence the term new age, the age of Aquarius, the change into this new cycle. It's not all bad. A lot of the Christians out there think that anything having to do with this stuff has got to be evil, but it's in their religion as well. It's in Christianity. The boy is soon to be born, in whom the iron age shall come to an end, and the golden one shall arise again in the whole earth. Now this is on the dollar bill. The United States dollar bill is showing you this. And it gets even better. Because if the golden one is going to arise again in the whole earth, what happens to the earth when this occurs? Now this is not just talking about one person. This is not a messianic return. This is everybody on earth transforming into something more. So let's read. Whatso tracks remain of our old wickedness, once done away, shall free the earth from never ceasing fear. That sounds pretty amazing. We're talking about an age where we are no longer under the grips of financial tyranny, where these cabals are not affecting us. We are free from that stuff. That's what the prophecy is saying is going to happen, coordinating with the return of the gods and us transforming to be like them, as you see in the next quote here. He, meaning the boy soon to be born in whom the gods shall appear again, the golden one shall arise again in the whole earth. That boy shall receive the life of gods, and we will see heroes and gods commingling, and he himself will be seen as a god. Whew. Wow. This is on the US dollar? And nobody talks about this. That's why it needed to be on Gaiam TV. I'm not going to get this on NBC. I'm not going to get this on Discovery Channel because, well, maybe Discovery Channel, but they're not ready for the truth just yet because we haven't allowed our media to speak the truth. The cabal has been controlling and pulling the strings. But the original founding fathers of the United States were not necessarily negative. They put this prophecy in there because they knew this was going to be happening and they wanted to tell us about what was going to happen. And as it says at the end, with his Father's worth, he, meaning all of us as we've been transformed, will reign over a world in peace. Now, it's very important to point out that the founding fathers believed that this would be the Ascension. And we can demonstrate that conclusively. When Washington died, George Washington died, they drew him ascending at the end of his life. Get a load of this now. This is him rising up into the heavens on his little cloud here. He's got the hand gesture of the gods, and here are the gods putting the garland on his head, which symbolizes now that he can open his pineal gland and create a stargate that he can travel through. And over here you see some of the earlier founding fathers who have already ascended. So there he is, getting his wreath, getting his ascended wreath, and the founding fathers encouraging him to go forward. Now here is another statue that was created in which we see George Washington looking a little suspiciously more ripped than I think he probably was in real life. You got a dude with wooden teeth. Check out the physique on this guy. I mean, he's buff. Okay, now I highly doubt that that's actually what George Washington looked like in real life. Call me crazy, but I don't think so. So here he is holding that sword, as you see, because he's become Zeus. He's become the embodiment of the main god in the Greek pantheon. This is not insignificant stuff here. Now, this next shot is a diagram from Manly Palmer Hall's book, in which we see George Washington ascending, and he's now up in heaven with the gods, which are drawn here with wings, but he has become a god. That's part of their prophecy. Now also, who the heck is this dude? You see this guy over here standing? You notice the woman who's bowing in fealty to him over here? He is much taller than everybody else in the room, as you can see very clearly here, and look at what's going on over his throne It's the double-headed Illuminati eagle. Oh my goodness. They put it right out there in front of you. They're not hiding anything here. They're showing you that this process has been watched over by human extraterrestrials who in this case happen to be taller than everybody else in the room. Very, very interesting. Now, in this next slide, I want to point out that I have no intrinsic difficulty with same-sex relations. It's okay for one dude to hold another dude. You know, now, I don't do that. It's not my thing. But if you want to get into that, that's okay. But Uncle Abe and good old Georgie Washington, he didn't just cut down that cherry tree. He might have lied about that, but then he revealed he had to tell the truth. Well, here he is having a very bi-curious experience with Uncle Abe. Wow. But this is because Uncle Abe ascended at the end of his life, and they put the wreath on him as well, and the angels are watching overhead. Now, all of this comes together when we see the U.S. Congress. This is something that William Henry, a wonderful researcher, has put this together, and I'm sharing it with you because I think it's so important that everybody's got to know. William Henry has talked about the Capitol Dome of the U.S. Congress. Now that dome is built to look like the pineal gland. That's one of the big secrets that you don't know. The third eye, the open pineal gland. But when you walk up the stairs and you go inside, you look inside the dome and this is what you see. These windows over here correspond to what you see right up here. So that's what we're looking at. There is a painting on the ceiling, and there's also what's called a fresco, a painting along the side of scenes from American history. This guy is what we're concerned with because you see this ring. It looks like a Stargate. It looks like a portal. And then inside the ring is a painting, and there is George Washington with all the gods and goddesses. Here's the sign, E pluribus unum, from many comes one, and he is portrayed on a rainbow, holding his hand in the gesture of the gods with his other hand on the sword, symbolizing that he's become Zeus again. He has become one of the gods, and this is closely mirroring an existing painting that they already knew of back when this was done, of Jesus on the rainbow, which indicates again that he has ascended. Even the halos around Jesus' body here correspond to the halos that are implied. You see this circle right here? Isn't that something? And you see the rings. It's the same thing that we see right here. They did that on purpose to indicate that they believed that George Washington had ascended. And guess what the name of that painting is called? It's called the apotheosis of George Washington. What does apotheosis mean? Man becomes God. Now, there are some fundamentalist Christian researchers who have taken all this and said, oh my God, it's all evil. George Washington became Apollo, he became Lucifer, it's all Luciferian, it's evil. But the prophecy said everybody's going to be turning into this, and it's mirrored in the Bible. Jesus in John 14:12 said, as I do these things, so shall you do them, and greater things, for I go unto my Father. Now, the rainbow body legend is not just a legend. It's not just Jesus with the Shroud of Turin and what might be a photographic negative of his body, as we talked about before. It's literally the rainbow body legend, in which we're seeing these people in Tibet, 160,000 documented on record, where this is what it looks like as they ascend. They literally just transform into rainbow-colored light. And we see multiple images of this amazing psychedelic kaleidoscope of color that happens to you in the ascension process. This is a spontaneous transmutation of the physical body. Now, here's the next thing. You notice this ring that we see here around the painting? You see these stars here? Well, you probably can't see it too well. Maybe in post we can zoom in on close on these stars, but each one of them has 5 points. And also, each one of these little guys here is a pine cone, the pineal activation. How many of these are there? We know there's 72, and then we got to look at the points. There's 5 points on each one. That gives us a total of 360 points, right? Now, let's take that number and let's multiply it by the total number of stars that we see. So we've got, now we're finding, okay, we got 360 points, 360 star points. Now let's multiply them by the total number of circles. That's the Masonic secret clue in the Apotheosis of George Washington. Oh my goodness. 72 times 360 is 25,920, which is the magic number of years that it takes us to do the great year. The big cycle that everybody was so excited about. There it is. And then just to make the point even more clear, here we have the fresco along the side of scenes from American history, such as the scene that became Thanksgiving, Squanto the Indian making peace with the Pilgrims. But what we also see is this. This is the moment that Cortez was greeted by Montezuma as a god. Notice Montezuma's hand gesture is the gesture reserved for the gods. What's that behind Cortez? The Aztec sunstone, which indicates the end of the Mayan calendar. They know when this thing is going to happen. They know what is going to happen. And if you still don't believe me, here's a piece of data discovered by Richard C. Hoagland. The Air Force One airplane that Kennedy was flying, they changed the serial number for Kennedy into 26,000. Isn't that strange? And we have multiple pictures of it. There's a picture of 26,000. There's Kennedy walking. You can see 26,000 in the background. Here he is coming down off the stairs. There's 26,000 up at the top right. And even worse, Lyndon Baines Johnson, who's now widely believed to have been Kennedy's real assassin, needed to be sworn in on Air Force One, serial number 26,000, with his wife right next to him. LBJ also had Kennedy's Oval Office redone in scarlet blood red curtains and carpeting. And Kennedy hated the color red, and he had that done over the weekend when Kennedy left for Dallas while he was shot. Unbeknownst to Kennedy, LBJ had that done. The Air Force One symbolizes the phoenix. It symbolizes the transmutation that we go through, and they put the number 26,000 on the tail of the plane, as you can see very clearly here in its display. So what are these guys up to? They know something's going on. They know it's the end of 26,000 years, and the big final clue was discovered by Raymond Mardicus, where we look at the actual levels of the pyramid, and we find that the Mayan Katun of 19.7 years is counted from the 1776, because you start with the last year of the cycle in Mayan numerology, so it's 1756 to 76. 13 courses brings you up to 2012. After 2012 is when they know this is what's going to happen. During that time that they visited Mesoamerica, they were using a 13 Katun system to count, as you see right here. And here's the frickin' Templar cross right up at the top. So that is a cipher. It's a cipher from the Sibylline mystery text, which they quoted at the bottom. That at the end of the age, we will become beings of light. It doesn't happen instantaneously. That's what we've obviously figured out, because the Mayan calendar came and went. Nothing happened. But what we see also is in these early prototype drawings of the Great Seal of the United States, it's not an eagle. It's a phoenix. There's the tuft on the back of the head. Notice the scales, because it's the bird of fire. The long, long legs. Benjamin Franklin wanted it to be the phoenix, and he got voted out. But here's the stargate that it forms that's going through. There's the garland of the laurel wreath and the symbol of the pineal gland opening, the pyramid transfiguration. So something is definitely going on here. Something is happening. And it seems very likely that these changes that we're experiencing right now are literally the fulfillment of the Ascension prophecy. Now, I've shared a lot of information with you here. This week's wisdom teaching is something is going on. You have not been told the truth. This is considered a Masonic secret. It has been kept hidden from you by the Masonic order for a reason. Because they now think they're the only ones that are going to go through this. They're creating their new world order, the new American century, They needed the catastrophic event, i.e. 9/11, Project for New American Century. We need a catastrophic and catalyzing event similar to Pearl Harbor. They wrote that in September 2000. September 2001, something big happened. The towers came down. They wanted to enact control, thinking they're the only ones that are going to ascend. That's not true. Now, I'm telling you that these prophecies have been widely misconstrued. Everybody is going to go through this, and that includes you. It includes me. And these wisdom teachings are designed to help you know what you need to do to be prepared for the ascension. Next week, we're going to start talking about those prophecies in even more detail. I'm David Wilcock. This is Gaiam TV. Thank you for watching.